Hello, everyone, and welcome to another neat webinar. Thank you so much for tuning in today for our session, Unlocking Audit Success, Navigating Compliance with Confidence. We are so happy to have you here today. Before I introduce Kathianne Ross, one of our great speakers from Fujirebio Diagnostics, I do want to go over a few housekeeping things. So first of all, if you are new to one of our webinars or new to this platform at least, you can find our chat, our Q&A, and our polls over to the right-hand side of the video itself. Feel free to chat with us at all times. Let us know where you're joining in from. I see we have a new right here in the chat from New Delhi. Welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. There is also a polls tab there. We have a poll running that we'll check in on later on in the session, but feel free to answer that and that'll stay open. And then we have our Q&A box up there too, where you can put in your questions. Feel free to put in a question at any time, and we will get to as many as we can at the end to hear from Kat. You are on listen-only mode, so we recommend earphones, headset, something to listen to the event through on your browser. You are muted, but we do welcome you to engage with us via the chat and the polls in the Q&A. You will receive a follow-up email with a copy of the recording and the slides. I know sometimes online quality can be a little bit lower. So if you are having trouble viewing anything, there's full screen mode. If you're on our landing page, there should be a text link beneath the video saying if you have problems, click here. That'll open a full screen version with our interactive portions as well. But always, your feedback is important to us. Your questions are important to us. So if you are not already a Neat customer, and you want more information about Neat, feel free to email us anytime, info@neat.com, or follow us on social media to reach out to us there. So just a quick copyright disclaimer for Neat. Hold on this slide for just a second. And I'm so excited to welcome in Kathianne Ross today. We hear from Kathianne all the time, including at our Validate conferences, which there's one coming up next month in May, but I'll get to that later. But we hear from Kathy at our conferences, online on our webinars. She's always a font of information. So we'll hear from her in just a few minutes about audit readiness and about the main topic. But first, I want to talk about Neat and Neat GX, and mostly I want to talk about you. So as I mentioned, we have that poll running on the side here to the right-hand side of your video. Go ahead, and if you haven't already, answer that poll, and let's see, what is your role when audited? When your company, when your organization is audited, what is your role, or what has your role been previously? you've never been part of an audit, you support the audit response team in some way, you're a key component of that audit response team, or your career is audit focused. Like you are an auditor, you are an inspector. Where do you sit in that? So let's see here. We've got some great results in already. So let's take a look. So far, 14% have never been part of an audit. 28% support that audit team, but 42% of our viewers right now are a key component of that audit team. And again, another 14 with a career focused in audits. So thank you so much for taking part in that poll, letting us know where you are at today. That's, I'm sure, going to inform a lot of what Kathianne is going to talk about later. So thank you for taking that poll. So before we get to Kathianne again, I want to talk a little bit about Neat, just in case you haven't heard about Neat before, you aren't a Neat customer, you haven't joined one of our webinars. So Neat is a global organization with operations in Ireland, the US, France, Germany, Switzerland, Denmark, Canada. We are all over, but most importantly, we are a public traded company on the Toronto Stock Exchange. And that means we are governed or we are held and we hold ourselves to a high standard of governance. And that's because we deal with a lot of life sciences platforms, any validation, any digital validation. And we are the validation platform of choice for 8 of the top 10 life science companies. And that includes 3 of the 4 COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers. So 40,000 plus users use our software as a service platform for their digital validation, including 40 plus certified global partners. And they use that platform because it is all developed in-house. We don't outsource for anything, and that's to maintain quality and security. We are ISO certified, and again, we hold ourselves to those high standards as a company. As a company, you know, working with global companies, global organizations all over the globe on very important projects and very important go-to-market products. And Neat is Neat GX. That platform that we've been talking about, that is Neat GX. So that is our software as a service validation lifecycle management platform that aims to take everything that was done on paper previously and move it to be digital, enabling regulated companies such as yourselves, hopefully, to make validation easier, faster, smarter, more accessible, and not have to store all of that paper around. It makes it a whole lot easier when it comes to audits, exactly what we'll be talking about today, being audit ready and compliance ready with a digital validation platform like NeatGX. So why do 8 of those top 10 life science companies choose Neat? Well, it is one platform that works for any work process. As I talked about, it's high quality, it's high security, and it eliminates 100% of paper. It's proven to reduce life cycle times, skilled labor hours, and validation costs, and proven to increase right first time and speed to market for your products. It's easy to use, easy to train, easy to scale, and audit ready at any time because it can be accessed from any device with an internet connection. Computer, phone, tablet, it's all ready to go and secure to your permissions to your organization. And that's just not what we say. That is what our customers have said. So all of these bullet points up here and many more case studies found on our website were all found in various independent customer studies and reported back to us. So there are a lot of data points here. I'm not going to go over all of them. I recommend that you can take a look at these. I definitely encourage you to take a look at our case studies on our website after this webinar, after we hear from Kat. But I don't want to take up any more time, and I want to introduce Kathianne Ross, the manager of IT compliance at Fujirebio Diagnostics, and again, a fabulous partner, a much beloved partner of Neat and our, our Neat Insights series, both in webinar format and in conference format. Kat, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you, James. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. Appreciate your time. As James said, we are going to talk about being audit ready and meeting our compliance standards and ensuring success while we are being audited. So a little introduction about myself. I'm Kathianne Ross. I typically go by Kat. It's easier to say, easier to spell. I have been IT compliance manager at Fujirebio Diagnostics. I started here in December of 2010. At the time, I was the only IT compliance person on staff. I was hired into that new role and have since built out the team as we have built out new business applications throughout the organization. I have over 25 years of experience with system validation and IT compliance in life sciences industry. And FDI, Fujirebio Diagnostics Inc., we went live with NEAT in October of 2020. My experience with regard to audits is not just here at FDI, but in previous employment. I have been a part of FDA inspections, customer audits, partner audits, and FDI, we are part of the MDSAP, which is the Medical Device Single Audit Program, which is a group where you go through one of those audits, basically that gets passed on to FDA, and so they don't have to come in and inspect unless there's cause for that. All right. So when we talk about being audit ready, what are we talking about? So first of all, we want to make sure that we have a solid, proven quality system and compliance program. We want to make sure that we have this program with documents such as SOPs and policies that explain how we do our work and the expected deliverables from having performed that work. And we have followed those procedures and policies unless we've had to deviate in some way, shape, or form. And then, so with regard to SOPs, we want to make sure that we have them, they are up to date, that they are based and written around the expectations of regulatory and industry standards. And we want to prove that we have followed those SOPs. And if there have been any deviations with it, whether it's in a test execution or we anticipated having deliverable that then we don't need, or something wasn't done on time, that we are accurately documenting that its occurrence, why it occurred, and a justification for it. And then, of course, we want to have evidence that we are indeed following that quality system or compliance program. So we want to, when we talk about evidence, one might say, well, what are we talking about? It's basically proof that we actually did the work that we said we did at the time we did it. So this can be screenshots, reports, obviously it's sign-offs, electronic signatures, things like that. So we want to basically provide evidence of the work that we have done to an auditor when asked to provide that. We want to show that all required documentation has been completed. Nothing's missing, again, unless you have documented a justification for why it was not needed or why it was excluded. This also goes down to signatures. Signatures, especially with test documentation, are easy to be missed. You have pages and pages and pages of test execution documentation. It's very easy to find a page that isn't signed or a step that wasn't signed off on. So we want to review that and make sure it's complete. We also want to make sure that our documentation can be retrieved quickly when it is requested. The last thing you want to do is have an auditor sitting in a room or on a call and you're saying, well, I need to go get that, and you can't find it, or you can't find the person who's responsible for speaking about that particular deliverable. We want to make sure that everything is organized, it's consistent in format, and it is presentable. We want the validation package, whether it's for a business application or equipment or any other type of validation, to tell an accurate story about the work that was done, what the plan was, how it was executed, and a summary of how it went. If you were able to follow the plan, by the letter, if you had to deviate from some things. And we want to make sure that the package, again, adheres to those agency guidelines and regulations, which again goes back to the quality system and those SOPs and policies that you have in place. All of this shows control over your process. And you also want to be sure that if you're managing many different systems with your quality and compliance program, that the deliverables and the format are consistent across those. So you might have a number of individuals who are part of your team who are responsible for doing the work, and you're working on 20 different systems. Well, everyone should be able to produce a validation final report that looks consistent in content and format. It just, again, shows control over process and consistency in the work that you're doing. All right, so So how do we get there with full compliance with our agency regulations and with our quality system? So I go back all the time to Alcoa. This was initially kind of, coined and applicable to our paper process for validation, but it is 100% applicable as we move to a digital validation world. And as we continue to meet the components of this, and actually, I think, do a better job now that we can digitize our validation documentation as opposed to having it on paper. So Alcoa was an acronym that was first coined by Stan W. Woolen from the FDA's Office of Enforcement in the 1990s. Over time, the concept has expanded, where initially we had 5 components that are in blue, and then the addition of another 4 that are in green in this diagram. And it's been adopted by a number of industries, many industries, for ensuring a framework that ensures data security and data integrity are maintained. And that we have, well, sorry. So other agencies who actually also use Alcoa are FDA, WHO, and GAMP. It's all about data reliability and quality and ensuring good documentation practices, whether you are on paper or in a digitized validation program. And for a long time, we could only meet these things on paper, but now that we have NEAT, we can do them electronically just as easily, if not better. All right, so a quick rundown of the different components. So Alcoa, the first part of it is attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate. So attributable is saying that we can identify the person who collected the data and who documented it. We want to make sure that it has not been altered, or if it has, that it's been properly documented and identifiable to the person who made the change. Legible means simply we can read it. It's also going to be on material that over time is going to be durable. Contemporaneous is talking about that we've documented the work at the time that the data was collected. So this goes back to our date and time stamps with electronic signatures. So we also want to make sure that any alterations to the data are also captured in the same way so that we can see a full life cycle of how the data has changed over time. Original means we want to be able to show that we have the golden record, the golden copy, relative to any duplicates or reproductions that have been made. So we want to make sure that we can identify the original deliverable as opposed to copies that may have been produced for whatever reason. And accurate. So we're talking about being free of errors. If we have had to alter or amend the data, we should be properly documenting that with good documentation practices, initialing, dating, signing, providing comments as to why the changes were necessary. To the other 4 that were added, which basically are the plus part of Alcoa, we want to make sure that the data is accessible when it's needed and over the full lifetime that it could be needed or is applicable. Also, we want it to be enduring, which means that, again, whatever it's recorded on is going to last over time. So whether that's paper or it's media or a database, that we're not going to lose readability of that data as time goes on. We also want to make sure it's consistent. We see date timestamp that's in order, that we also are accurately documenting when that data was collected and how it may have been changed. And we also want to make sure that it's complete. So if anything has been deleted or changed, that we can easily identify what the original data was relative to the change that was applied for whatever reason. All right, so what do we do when we're preparing for an audit? So we'll go back a few years, many years in some cases, and we were fully on paper. In the sense of we may have been authoring documentation in Word, or for those who have been in industry a really long time, WordPerfect, and then printing that and signing it, executing it, filing it away. So concerns with regard to when we're preparing for an audit and it's on paper, is first of all, we're wondering what's the scope of the audit. I know particularly with computer system validation, um, I feel like we could have an auditor come in for a particular business process, and it may actually touch or have data that supports that business process across 3, 4, 5, many different business applications. So we kind of need to have everything ready to go at any time. We need to think about what is here on site and what may have been archived. There's only so much room for our paper and our file cabinets. So over time, you may have sent things to different locations, places like Iron Mountain. Will we be able to get it back if we don't have it on site? We need to retrieve it quickly. Is everything there? Has it all been signed? The basics of the SOP said we needed to have all these different deliverables. Can we find them? Can we provide them to the auditor? Can they read them? Are they going to understand what they're looking at and what they're reviewing? We also want to be able to see the history and the life cycle of each document. Again, difficult on paper. We're printing, we have that document. Well, now what do we do with it on paper? Are we sticking it in a file cabinet? Are we scanning it first and saving a PDF and then putting it in a file cabinet? The reality is that on paper, those were the original documents. They need to be retained for review. So it's can turn out to be a huge volume of paper and binders that may need to be reviewed and then pulled and provided to an auditor. And then now, especially, we think about, well, what if the audit is remote? We may have auditors, on site, sitting in a conference room, where we can go to our file room and collect the documentation and hand it to them. But they may not be on site. So then you're in a situation where you're wondering, well, how much do we need to scan in PDF? Are we going to be able to do that quickly? So we're all definitely hardships of being on paper. The pictures on the screen are actually real pictures of validation binders from work that we've done here at FDI. At one point, we've had 5 4-foot file cabinets with 5 drawers with binders and binders and binders of documentation, and then a separate log we maintained in Excel just to make sure that we could find things when we needed to, basically a document directory. So now that we are using Neat, we are paperless. So preparing for audit is a million times easier than it was on paper because everything is just at our fingertips. So in the next group of slides, we're going to touch on, some concerns of our old way of doing things, being on paper, relative to the new way, which would be paperless, digital, and how not only is this easier, but I've actually found it to be better and very, very well received. Additionally, we'll talk about the components of Alcoa, bringing us back to our previous slides, and how leveraging functionality in Neat, how we meet those Alcoa principles as we go forward and do our validation work. All right, so preparing for audit. Again, previously on paper, we've got to know where everything's at. We got to know where those binders are at. We need to go through them, make sure everything's complete and signed and nothing's missing. With Neat now, we have basically a virtual file cabinet of that documentation. So we can easily set up in our workspace, whatever you're validating, whether it's system names, equipment IDs, other testing procedures, and we can easily get to those and drill down to those projects. As far as Alcoa goes, we are for sure meeting the availability and enduring components of Alcoa in the sense that we can get to the data immediately, right away. It's easily identifiable and retrievable, and it's enduring because we're in a computer system. So we're not worried about, the paper had coffee spilled on it. Has there been a flood in the building? Do we have things scanned and sitting on a file share somewhere where we're able to get them quickly? Our next concern is where is everything? Is it on-site or off-site? How far back might the auditor want to go? So all projects in Neat, again, are available for review to individuals who have been given access to do so. We also have the convenience of our project log, where for any particular entity, whether again system, equipment ID, or other, you can see your list of projects and when it was created, what it was for, who created it, and we get a nice unique identifier for that project and whatever concatenated schema you might want that to be. With the click of a mouse, we can see projects in process. We can see documents, what state they're in. Are they in development? Are they in pre-approval? In test, post-approved. So we're meeting a number of those ALCOA principles with this, which would be attributable. Again, every document, every project is traceable through audit trail, or just visible on the screen as to who is responsible for the work and who did it. And depending on the construct and content of your log, you can have as much detail in there as you need. So you really have a quick view of what has been done for that project over time. We're attributable again because we can see who did it, available because we can get to it, enduring, it's going to last over time, and it's consistent. So once you've set up your configuration in Neat and you've set up your projects and your document packs, what documents are going to be automatically generated when you create a new project, you automatically have those things created and they're numbered sequentially in whatever schema you want. So it really is very, very easy to get to your documentation. In the screenshots here, you can see just an example actually of internally our Neat GX system validation folder, starting back with our initial validation of the system and on through various change controls, and then the log from which those projects were created. All right, so again, preparing for audit, is everything there? Has it all been signed? When we have an audit coming and we're preparing for it and we're trying to make a guess in a lot of cases as to what the auditor might want to see, so we're prepared. We basically were going and we were pulling binders of documents and again leafing through them, making sure everything was signed. Is anything missing? There's also the concept of a transfer of custody, right? So say we have a project in process and we're not done all the test execution, but perhaps the auditor is saying, show me what you have going on. Show me your current change control project for this particular application. And you're like, well, I've got some test scripts that are with, person A, who's on another floor of the building, and some maybe with person B, who's remote, and not working on site. Perhaps you've got reports that are out getting signature if you're on paper and it's passing from office to office, desk to desk to get those signatures. Where is it, right? I had many times before we deployed Neat where I'm trying to gather documentation to make sure that I've got everything there and I want to archive it. And I'm sending an email to all the members of the project team saying, hey, I sent out, I put out this change control summary, left it on so-and-so's desk a week ago. It hasn't come back to me yet. Can you tell me who signed it or who might have it right now? It's not a concern anymore with Neat at all because you can absolutely see exactly where the document is in whatever state and who still needs to attend to it if that's necessary. So here we have a particular project for Neat and the various documents that were a part of it. And then within that, we can drill down into our testing document, our test scripts, and see all those scripts together and the sign-offs, who did what, when, do we have attachments and things of that nature. And it's, again, super easy just to scroll through the document with some of these indicators that show that something has been signed or maybe it's been left blank. If you have made changes and the tester may have had had signed off and needs to redo something, that's evident on the screen as well and kind of a track changes view, which is really nice. You see old value, new value, why, and the original date and time of signature as well as the date and time that the change was signed off on. So we meet almost all the ALCOA principles just with this concept. Again, attributable, legible, contemporaneous, available, and consistent. All right. So we also want to be, there we go. Okay. The history life cycle of each document, we want to make sure that's evident and that's traceable. So Again, we are talking about, can we see where the document started and where it ended up? This is really particularly useful in the case of requirement specifications that over time may change. You start with an initial scope of the application. Over the course of years, you gain new functionality, you create new requirements, and you want to see those changes over time. So again, previously on paper, you go, well, how many previous revisions of this do we keep in a file cabinet so that we retrieve it? You may have a revision history in the document, but again, it's difficult to pull those physical entities over time. So with Neat, everything is right there. We can see the full history of the document. We can see our pre and post approvals. We can see dating back to years, months, days, hours, whatever, how that document has changed. Again, we've got attributable, legible, contemporaneous, available, enduring, and consistent. That is all met with being able to look at the full life cycle of a document in Neat. So I lose my navigation here. Trying to advance forward, but I lost my navigation arrows for my PowerPoints. There we go. Okay, got it back. Sorry about that. All right. Continuing on from preparing for audit, again, when we list is actually an image of an executed test script. So here we can see some changes that were made on the script after those steps were signed and the full revision history of those changes. We can see the full audit trail, and we know what was altered when with full Part 11 compliance sign-offs for each of those. Any amendments, corrections, re-signs are fully captured. You really can't miss it, and there's no way to hide or falsify your data collection here. So again, different from being on paper where you may have been printing screenshots and then labeling them at the end of the project and attaching them to your scripts, so your dates might not match up with regard to your test execution to when you may have been cataloging that objective evidence. In Neat, it's all right there at your fingertips.
Sorry, Kat. I just
Yeah.
want to interrupt really quickly. It looks like your video is frozen. Can you try turning it off and turning it back on
Sure.
again?
Yep. Yeah, it might still be frozen.
All right. Well, we can still hear
Okay.
you, so we can just move on.
Very good. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure why. Okay. All right. Yeah, hopefully it unfreezes. Hopefully everyone can still hear me. All right.
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Okay, great. That's the most important part. All right. So when we're preparing for audit, again, is the audit remote? Are individuals on site? Is everything scanned and easily transmissible to the individual who might be asking for it? So it really doesn't matter with Neat whether your audit is on site, if the auditors are on site or remote. Nobody has to be in the same room to see what was done in Neat and what has been documented and archived there. Anything that's visible on the screen can be exported into a protected Word document or PDF without losing any content. You can include your attachments, your deviations, a full audit trail for the document. Or if you must, you can also print that documentation and hand it off to somebody, or you can just send it electronically to any of your recipients. Again, almost all of the components of Alcoa are met with that in the sense of attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, accurate, available, enduring, consistent, and complete. All right. Okay. So when we talk about our methods of presentation, again, we have a big difference now that we're in Neat versus being on paper. So we don't have to produce anything on paper anymore or scan anything or even send PDFs if it's not desired. We can actually just log into the application, and Neat provides a very easy way to navigate between project documents that are linked to one another. So for example, in this particular slide, you'll see on the left an example of a requirement spec. and then our testing document in which had contained scripts in which those requirements were contained, and then a deviation report for a test incident that was discovered while we were testing. So we can easily just navigate between all of those, really just with a click of the mouse, and produce any or all of that for the auditor to review. Okay, so as far as also being active on the screen, you can certainly pull this all up on the screen for your auditor or inspector. And you'll see in these screenshots, there are a lot of dynamic and active links that will just bounce you from one deliverable to another. So here we have an example of a traceability matrix report. There we go. I think keep moving my mouse, so it's making my navigation bar go away. Our traceability matrix report up top, down to test section report, which contains all the information from the testing document that had the scripts, down to our issues report. So again, you can connect directly from one document to the other, as opposed to, for example, on paper, two of the main documents that I might have started with on paper with an auditor is typically the traceability matrix. I generally see that as the cornerstone of your validation package. And then whatever your last bookend document was. So if it's an initial validation project, your validation final report. If it's a change control project, it might be a change control summary report. And you provide that, and then the auditor may drill down and say, okay, I see in your traceability matrix, there's this particular requirement. Now, can you produce the script for me in which that was tested? And then you may go grab that paper script and supply that to the auditor. And then they may review it and they may say, well, there's a deviation here. Can you show me that report? Now I need to go grab that other report. So I'm going back to the file cabinet or back to my binder. Or you just have the binder there and you're flipping through it. You don't have to do that now. You literally can just go one item to the next, so the auditor can review it easily and efficiently. As we know, oftentimes we're trying to pack a lot of documentation to be reviewed into a single audit. So I found that the ease of review is very appreciated by our auditors when we're not handing them four 3-inch binders full of paper. Back to our exported files, again, I mentioned previously, any of your documentation, your testing documentation, your reports of any nature can be exported and provided to an auditor. So, you may want to, the auditor's like, hey, I'm going to hit these things in the afternoon. Can you provide them to me this morning? And then I'll get to them. Great, no problem. I'll give them to you in a Dropbox file, SharePoint, whatever it's been set up by your quality team for facilitating the audit. I've also had auditors who have said, well, I know I'm not going to get through this all today by the end of the business day. So can you give me the PDFs? Can I take them with me? And when I'm back at my hotel room for the night, then I can review them and I'll come in with any questions the next morning. So this has been super easy again, because you also can export all of your attachments, your screenshots, your files that you've attached, and your reports, logs, whatever you've generated as objective evidence also can be exported with the click of a mouse, and then is easily identifiable between your testing document and then the screenshot for which that was taken for the particular step. All right, so the big question to this point, how have our auditors and reviewers felt about our use of NEAT when we're presenting them documentation from the application? And so far, we're almost 4 years into having NEAT in production. We've gone through numerous audits, and I've had nothing but great responses from those reviewers and auditors. I see them almost have a sense of relief on their face when I'm saying, here, let me just pull this up on the screen for you, as opposed to let me go grab the cart that has the 15 binders of documentation that now you're going to have to go leaf through on your own. To date, I have not had anyone, whether it was an independent auditor, a partner audit, even FDA reviewers who were looking at like clearance for some of our products. Nobody has yet to really question me on what this is, in a sense that they were, at all suspicious. Like, why aren't we seeing paper at this point? Why are you doing things differently? It's been very, very well received. And there's been absolutely no concerns with regard to data integrity, traceability, or Part 11 compliance. In fact, it's so much better because, previously we might have handed over a test script that might have been executed 2 years ago, and you've got someone's initials and the date on it and their signature, and unless you're going back to the signature card that employee first signed when they joined the company, is it really their signature? You're testing to that fact, but really, NEAT has absolutely upped our game with being able to be audit ready and compliant, and just prove that we have a really excellent quality system with all the supporting documentation. So just a couple like tips for success and lessons learned over our past couple years while we've adopted NEAT as a cornerstone of our validation program here at FDI. First thing I always say is you want to make sure you validate your paperless validation system. So number one, make sure that's done. You're not going to treat this any differently than any other business application. We found what worked for us when we were doing our validation work initially before our production deployment was I didn't want any paper scripts for our paperless validation system. That didn't seem to make much sense. So we actually, our NEAT test execution, they were our first executed scripts in our production environment, and we used our validation environment as the system under test. So that actually worked really, really well. We just did an intermittent like system release memo to say we were releasing our production environments specifically for use to document our testing of NEAT. Second, I would say, everyone gets nervous when you have an auditor come in, and don't be nervous about what you're presenting. As far as I'm concerned, if it's acceptable to have clinical data, product development data, manufacturing data in a business application, there's no reason that your system validation or equipment validation, test method validation documentation should be any different. Also know your process and your navigation paths. Like, have a plan for where you're going to start with the auditor and where you'll lead them. I mentioned before, I typically, when an auditor would ask to see documentation from, say, a most recent change control for one of our business applications, I always start with the traceability matrix and the last document that was produced, and then let the auditor ask for what they want to see from there. When you've had things configured well in NEAT and it's nice and organized, it's very easy to start and then drill back to where you want to be. You also want to add some checks and balances to your project structure and doc pack so that it's easier to identify any gaps or deficiencies in your documentation. One example of that is, for a number of years, we had a SOP as part of our IT compliance set of SOPs where we would do a biannual periodic compliance review of our validation documentation. And the idea was that we would go back through all the documentation produced for every system over the past 2 years, and we would look for those pages that may have not been signed. We would look for those documents that may have been missed and hadn't been explained out elsewhere. And well, what I found is my team is not that big, so we were often reviewing our own work. And also, if you're 4 versions of a system away now from where you were 2 years ago, and you've had code lock memos, and there's no value add to producing a missing code lock from 2022. It's done. You've already moved on. So what we did is we actually created a new document, a checklist in our doc pack, which is, we call it a project completion checklist. And we have 10 questions in there that at the end of every project we answer, are all the deliverables there and signed? Have all test incidents be closed? Are there any service tickets associated with it? Do we have to get signatures from external divisions? Did any SOPs that required update for this, did that get done? So we've incorporated that into our standard doc pack, which now it's super easy. We don't have that, well, we're 2 or 3 years out and we missed something if, a while back, and we now have to explain to an auditor why we never caught it then. And I would also say, lastly, just be transparent and genuine. Help, if the auditor would have any questions or concerns about your use of NEAT, you want to make sure that they understand how much better your, audit readiness is going to be by using it, how much better your documentation is going to be, and how transparent and easy it is to use. So I have found for sure that it is like just exponentially added to our visibility, traceability, and accountability for the work that we do here. And I'll open it up now for any questions. And I'm sorry that I'm still frozen on the screen.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't know why.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Now
I
you're
took the
back.
blur off. Okay, well, sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much, Kat. That was
Sure.
very informative. We do have some questions here.
Great.
A very popular question that was asked in two different ways here, so I'll put it up by from anonymous. Is if you're in an audit where there's both paper and digital records, so a hybrid system, how do you keep track of which system holds which info and cutover date?
Yeah. That's a great question, and something that anybody is going to have to face when you're going from, paper to digital. Even if you've been in a hybrid system previously, where perhaps you had an electronic document management system where you were authoring a lot of documentation and getting signatures, but still doing your test scripts on paper, that adds an extra element. So, when we deployed NEAT to production at my company, I said to my team, we're not doing any more test scripts on paper. It's just not happening. Now, we were still in a hybrid mode with a lot of our applications, and we still are now, just because we have large project teams for some of those, where we do have, the protocol, the plans, the protocols, the summaries, system release memos, things like that in our EDMS, and then we have test execution over in NEAT. So, basically, we just our practice for doing that was, we said, well, when we have downtime, let's start to get our scripts over into NEAT, even if they don't need to be executed yet. Let's just get them there. And then we went back to our EDMS and we would archive the last revision of those there, so that going forward, if someone was pulling scripts to re-execute again for a system and they can't find it in the EDMS, they know it's in NEAT. As far as benchmarking what's where, hopefully you've been able to keep, it's very easy with NEAT to see in the log, what your first project was for whatever validation project it is. Again, whether it's a system equipment test method, whatever you're using NEAT for. So that's easy to tell, like, okay, I can see I started my first project for system A in January of 2023. I know everything done prior to that is on paper or in another business application. So there is a bit of a manual component to it, but as you build over time, it becomes easier and easier. And I just encourage, individuals, when you're done utilizing something that's on paper or in another, like in your EDMS, again, archive it, file it properly, document it, and then you're just looking forward with using NEAT, from that point forward.
Right. Great. Great. Thank you for that answer. Next one, also from anonymous. How can we access data during an audit when the system is down?
That's a really good question. Excellent question. And you might ask that about any system, right? So any system could be down at any time. The best I can say for this is, to date, in 4 years, we've never had NEAT be down. We have excellent uptime. It was something that we made sure, that need was going to be met going forward. Unless you're pulling stuff offline and saving PDFs down, which kind of defeats the purpose. all I can lean on is that it needs highly reliable for uptime. So if I was in a case where, the audit was happening, all you can really do is explain, we can't access the system right now. I'm putting in a support ticket. And honestly, our support's excellent. I get anything I've had questions on or needed to be resolved, which has not been any downtime, by the way, has been resolved very quickly. So, if there are things that you feel like would be really critical, like the auditor's definitely going to be looking at this and you really had a concern about that, you export it, and you create a library outside of the application. But any system is going to be, at risk for that at any time, even if it's on-prem or in the cloud. You know,
Right.
anything can happen.
Right. I mean, we saw a couple years ago, Facebook, or now Meta,
Mm,
locked themselves out of their own building
yes.
at some point due to a server being
Yes.
down. So it does happen
It
to
happens,
even
right?
the largest
Yeah.
companies. But yes, thank you. That was a great answer. I promise we didn't prep Kat on that answer.
I know.
Her
I was like,
experiences are wholly hers.
In four
But yeah,
years,
I
I've
would
not had to deal with that. Not for neat, anyway.
Right. I would underline there the customer service is part of
Yeah,
it.
it's
I
fantastic.
don't even have an answer to that. I tried to reach out to one of our process engineers to see what they would say. They unfortunately haven't gotten back to me, but you can
Yeah,
always ask that question if you have an individualized demo, if you have a one-on-one demo. Your CSM, or one of your neat reps would reach out to you and be able to answer that question.
right.
Uh, but yes, as Kat said, hopefully it never happens.
Hopefully, it never
Um,
happens.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. So next one is from Kevin here. Goes back to what you were showing, the project logs. How is the project
Yeah.
log built?
Yep. So the project log it's one of those items that's built against a database view, and it is what I would call like a living object in the sense that you pull up the log and you say you want to create a new project, and it pulls up a form. You put in your information, you save the log built, and it gets added. And then as a result, and your neat implementation. People are going to help you build that out initially. I have been successful with editing our log, specifically for our engineering group. They wanted an extra column added where they could change the status of a project. It made things a little bit easier for them to track. And I contacted help. Actually, our customer success person helped me out with that, and I was successful in doing that. The log is so powerful, but yet easy to use. It's kind of the backbone of the system. So you're going to add your project. It's automatically going to give you the new project ID, however you've decided to have that configured. What we use here is we have like our system IDs are generally like the year it was initiated dash however many systems that year we newly implemented. So maybe it's the first, second, third. Then I put in some sort of acronym, like for NEAT, it's 2019-02-KPVS. And then from there, the system will automatically log a 001, 002 as you go forward, and then automatically create whatever documents you would anticipate needing for that particular type of project. So whether it's initial validation with 20 different pieces of documentation, or it's a small change control where you just have a handful. Once it's set up, it's like literally a breeze to use, and it takes about 20 seconds to add a new project to it and just get that whole backbone for the project created. Very unique, actually.
Excellent. Yeah, yeah, and that answered another question that Theory, another one of our viewers, had put in, asking where those are all stored. The project log is your one-stop shop for all of those projects, all that
Yep.
information, and that this transitions nicely into another question. So, do you give the auditor access to Neat, or provide the guided reviews only? Do you provide that project log? What do you give to the auditor?
Yeah. So that's a really great question, and it really is going to vary company by company, like what your policy is. I personally don't prefer to give an outsider access to the application without oversight. I would entertain it if I'm sitting there with them. However, Neat has a lot of capabilities to restrict access. I know with version 9.2 coming out, there's a whole new set of functionality with regard to setting up collections and things where you can give an auditor access to the application and say you can only look at these particular documents or this particular project. I just personally find that I just like to be aware of what they're doing and what they're looking at and be able to answer their questions, right there when they have them. So again, it is completely up to your quality group and how your organization runs, whether that is something you would typically do or don't. Um, Personal company preference, but there is great capability to do that with very, very restricted access for an auditor, should you choose to do that.
Perfect. Yeah, there are a lot of different permission levels, viewer levels, and I know there is a view
Yeah.
only log that people put in there. How that works with licenses, I don't quite know. But again, anyone from Neat helping you set up your instance would be able to
Yeah.
answer that.
Yeah.
Another quick question here put in by Anonymous. We have a couple left. Is
Mhm.
the project log the same as a pack log, what their company calls it? Have you heard that terminology as well?
I have not heard the term backlog. So I guess the best I can do without knowing exactly what they're referring to with their backlog at their company, the project log is literally just it's your list of projects for any particular branch of the application. Again, the way we have set up for my group is each branch is a system name. Each system has its own project log, and within that project log are all of the projects cataloged over time. Now, with each project, again, comes what Neat calls your doc pack, your document pack, and that's that default automated set of templates that will be produced for your particular project. Again, if it's an initial system validation, you may have things like your risk assessment, your Part 11 assessment, your system validation master plan template, all the way down to your validation final report at the end. For change control, it may be a change request form, your change control plan, your testing document, your change summary. So I don't know if that answers the question, but hopefully that explains a little further how that project log works.
Perfect. Hopefully that gives enough information. And
Yeah.
we have time for the one last question on
Okay.
here from Neil. Do links get broken? And if so, are users notified to fix prior to an audit? So those links within Neat to other documents. Have you experienced any breaking links?
I have not experienced any breaking links. They are, I haven't. And what's actually really cool is that like with our traceability matrix report, when you export that, and if you want to pull it out of the system, those links are still active when it's pulled down into a protected Excel file. So you can save that out somewhere on a drive or something like that, and as long as the person who's clicking it has access to Neat, you can click it and it'll take you right to the document. So I haven't experienced that I can recall any of those links breaking either in or out of the system.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever heard of that either.
Yeah.
I know that all the links within Neat between documents are held and maintained within Neat.
Yeah.
So if for some reason a title were to change or something, it would keep that link up.
Yeah, like your object ID is static. Like, what
Right.
once you've approved a document or an object of any type and it's been approved as a version 1, you can't change the metadata behind it. So you can't change the ID. It's all, it's right there and it's
Right.
unique. Um, Also, too, although you can move some things between different branches, um, the metadata follows it. So it's not like, I know we have some applications where you may import a file or something and attach it to a record, but it's not really in the database. It's really just a link to where that's sitting on your file share. But so if it goes away from the file share, the link's broken. That's not the case with Neat. anything that's brought in, either developed in Neat that's linked up, or anything external that's imported into Neat and attached is in the database. So it's, it could leave a file share forever, but you're still going to have it in Neat.
Right, right. Well, perfect. Those were all of the questions that we got, and we are right here on the edge of
Great.
time. So thank you so much, Kat, for the informative presentation, the questions, and everything.
Sure. Sorry,
I
my
will
video
say
froze.
no, it's all right. It happens with these webinars. I will say to anyone who might have joined late, the recording and the slides will be sent to you hopefully by the end of the week here. So give us a day or two to do that, but we will send that to you. And just before we go here, I want to talk about a couple upcoming webinars and where you can see more of Neat and Neat GX. So tomorrow, we don't often do back-to-back webinars, but tomorrow we have our monthly demo for April. Every month we do a live webinar to demo Neat GX. So if you liked what you saw here, you want to sign up for that, I've put the link in the chat. You can sign up today. That'll be tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Thank you so much, Stephen. Really appreciated you joining. We also later this month have leveraging AI in pharma, navigating regulatory landscape and use cases with our partners from PQE. And then finally, our first May webinar that we've just announced, the electronic batch record and validation in the new world, exploring electronic batch records and validation. So we'll be pushing more into that, as well as a conference coming up, BIO International 24 in San Diego, California, happening in June. Come out and visit Neat in person as part of that conference if you're going to be there. But of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Validate. Validate 2024 is coming up next month in May, and that will be in Berlin, Germany. Registration is open now. It's getting down to the wire, so be sure to register now if you haven't already. Validate is Neat's annual conference focusing on digital validation, the industries that it touches, and everything to do with it. That is our conference hosted by us. And there's going to be a lot of great panels, a lot of great speakers, a lot of great networking with your peers and colleagues, and some other events in Germany that my colleagues in our events team have brewed up. So we're really looking forward to seeing you there. If you are going, let us know in the chat if you're already registered. But we're excited to see you there. Or excited to see you at another Neat webinar. I know I'm just a couple minutes over, but thank you so much for those who've stuck it out and stayed with us. Thank you again to Kathianne Ross from Fujirebio Diagnostics for the presentation today, and we hope to see you all later at another Neat webinar. Have a great day.